The $100 is marked by severe deformities, limited minds, and isolated lives. Whole generations. Cruel diseases transmitted by generations of closed blood. The most degenerate families by incest. For decades, a dark reality remained hidden in the bowels of rural America. In the remote mountains of the Appalachian region, specifically in the far west of Virginia, a community lived practically forgotten by the rest of the world. It is so 2007. It is in 1937 when the Great Depression still punished the country, and mountainous regions like this one remained isolated not just geographically, but also culturally and socially. Around 1850, the Calloway family settled in this region when Jeremiah Calloway, a farmer from Pennsylvania, acquired cheap and unexplored lands for cheese and loans in 5E1. Over the decades, the family grew, but their contact with the outside world decreased dramatically. The lack of suitable roads, combined with a natural distrust of outsiders, turned the Calloways into a virtually self-sufficient community. The first significant contact of this family with the outside world occurred in 1937, when a rural doctor named Dr. Elliot Montgomery, who visited isolated communities offering basic care, came across a disturbing reality. Says 0112, "I will never forget what I saw that day," reported Dr. Montgomery in his medical diary, later donated to the University of Richmond. Children with obvious malformations, adults with distinctly similar facial characteristics, and an alarming prevalence of cognitive deficiencies, ZO1-3 discovered only in 1973. Montgomery's records revealed that, among the approximately 42 Calloway family members inhabiting that mountainous region, at least 23 showed visible signs of genetic problems. Among the documented conditions were extra fingers, polydactyly, abnormal skull development, severe strabismus, and varying degrees of intellectual impairment. So 204, the doctor noticed something even more disturbing: the family tree. As he was able to reconstruct it through conversations with the most articulate clan members, he found that marriages between first-degree cousins were common, and there were even cases of unions between uncle and niece, as well as half-siblings who formed couples. ZO2N25, this was not just a geographically isolated family. It was a lineage that, for generations, had closed in on itself, intensifying harmful recessive genes. One of the most striking images described by Dr. Montgomery was of 3 Calloway children, aged 6 to 12, who had remarkably similar faces, prominent foreheads, very close set eyes, underdeveloped chins, and the same empty expression. Sioden 2051, in his medical description, he noted that it seemed the same face had been printed 3 times, each with small variations of the same underlying condition. The family patriarch at that time, Obadiah Calloway, a 67-year-old man who surprisingly had no obvious physical deformities, explained to the doctor, "We take care of our own. The outside world doesn't understand our customs. Here, we keep our blood pure." So 3Z112, check to see if you are already subscribed to this channel. What you are about to find out goes beyond the imaginable, revealing family secrets that society has tried to hide for decades. Do not miss any details of these forbidden stories that will change your vision of human nature. Cesar 334 in 1952, 15 years after Dr. Montgomery's initial meeting with the Calloways, another health professional turned his attention to this family. Dr. Harold Winters, a geneticist at the University of Virginia, had found Montgomery's diaries and decided to investigate this unique case of genetic isolation. Winters organized a small team that included an anthropologist, a nurse, and a photographer. C04501, with the reluctant permission of Josiah Calloway, who had taken family leadership after Obadiah's death, the team spent 2 weeks documenting the conditions of the community. The produced report, entitled Genetic Isolation in the Appalachia, a Case Study, became a significant scientific document, although it remained restricted to specific academic circles for decades due to the sensitive nature of its content. CO 429 Doc I. Winters documented that the third and fourth generations of the Calloways had alarming rates of congenital problems. Among the 16 children born between 1940 and 1952, 9 had severe cognitive deficiencies, 7 had visible physical deformities, and 5 did not survive beyond their early years. We are witnessing the devastating effects of homozygosity for harmful recessive genes. CO 4753, Winters wrote in his report. When closely related individuals have children, the probability that both carry the same recessive deleterious gene increases dramatically. The result is the concentration of genetic traits that, in diverse populations, would remain rare and diluted. One of the most iconic cases documented was that of Eliza Calloway, a 16-year-old born with a condition known as syndactyly, the congenital fusion of the fingers. CO 524. In Eliza's case, all fingers on both hands were fused, creating a mitten-like appearance. Additionally, she had a severe curvature of the spine and limited verbal capacity. Most disturbing was Eliza's family history. Her father, Malachi Calloway, was also her uncle, her mother Rebecca's brother. This particularly close union resulted in an extreme concentration of problematic recessive genes. CO 55T featured, Dr. Winters recorded in his notes. Rebecca confessed to me that her other 3 children, all born with even more severe deformities, did not survive childhood. She attributes these deaths to divine will, but the real cause is unequivocally genetic. The research also revealed that the family had developed their own explanations for the conditions afflicting many of its members. As 06 in one prove they did not attribute the deformities and deficiencies to close kinship, but to a mixture of local superstitions and peculiar religious interpretations. Jedidiah Calloway, one of the family elders, explained to the team's anthropologist, "When a pregnant woman is frightened by a wild animal, the child can be born marked. This is how it works. Since ancient times, CO 635, this denial of the true cause allowed intra-family marriage patterns to continue for generations, perpetuating the cycle of genetic problems." While Dr. Winters documented the scientific aspect, the team's anthropologist, Dr. Raymond Parker, focused on the social context that allowed such genetic isolation to persist for so long. The CO 659, the Calloway isolation is not only physical but also ideological, Parker wrote. They developed a system of beliefs that values family blood above all, seeing any external marriage as an unwanted dilution of their lineage. In 1967, as the winds of social change blew throughout America, life in the Calloway community remained virtually unchanged since the previous century. CO 1724, it was this year that a young, newly graduated, and idealistic social worker named Martha Jenkins was assigned to evaluate the conditions of isolated families in Appalachia as part of a federal program to combat rural poverty. Jenkins meticulously documented her observations in official reports and in her personal diary, providing a rare glimpse into the daily life of this family, marked by consanguinity. The CO 751. The first thing that impressed me was the silence, wrote Jenkins. For a community with so many children, there was a remarkable absence of laughter and play. Many of the children were simply sitting, staring at nothing, or repeating monotonous movements with their hands. The social worker documented the family's daily routine, which revolved around basic subsistence tasks, maintaining gardens, breeding a few animals, collecting wood, and maintaining their precarious dwellings. CO 8C22. Most remarkable was how tasks were distributed according to the limited abilities of many family members. Ezekiel Calloway, a 40-year-old man with severe cognitive impairment, spends his days carrying stream water to the homes. It is the only task he can accomplish consistently, and the family has developed a system of sounds and simple gestures to communicate with him," reported Jenkins. 0846, social life within the community was structured around rigid family hierarchies. The patriarch at that time, 72-year-old Josiah Calloway, made all significant decisions, from marriage arrangements to internal disputes. His word was final and undeniable. One of the most disturbing aspects documented by Jenkins was the practice of promising children for future marriages, often between cousins or even uncles and nieces. As 09 Winfield, she witnessed as Abigail, a 12-year-old girl, was already promised to her first cousin, Isaiah, 14. If you have watched this far, it is because you understand the importance of knowing our hidden history. Comment now. Blood tells stories that words cannot express, and be part of this journey of discovery, unearthing truths that society preferred to forget. 0993 Jenkins described in detail the condition of Ruth Calloway, a 32-year-old woman who was the mother of 5 children, all fathered by her first cousin Jeremiah. Ruth had a distinctly asymmetrical face, with one eye significantly lower than the other, and her movements were marked by involuntary spasms. 3 of her children had variations of the same condition in different degrees of severity. 1001. The most impressive thing is that, for them, this is normal, wrote Jenkins. Ruth shows no awareness that her condition or that of her children is unusual. When I tried to approach the subject delicately, she simply answered, "We are all children of the Lord, made in His image." The social worker also registered the presence of what the family called the room of silence, a separate room in one of the main houses where family members with the most severe disabilities, some unable to walk or communicate, were kept. 1031, these individuals were cared for by older women in the family who fed them and performed basic care. "The vision of that room will be forever etched in my memory," wrote Jenkins. 6 people, with ages ranging from 9 to 47, all presenting severe deformities, lying on straw mattresses on the floor. The odor was almost unbearable, despite obvious efforts to keep the place clean. The most disturbing thing was the silence. Even when I approached, only one of them reacted with a low moan. 52, in her official report, Jenkins recommended immediate intervention by social services, especially for the children. However, judicial complexities and the family's fierce resistance prevented concrete action for several years. C11 and 80s in 1978, the Calloway case gained new attention when Dr. Lawrence Richardson, a geneticist from the newly established Duke University Studies Center, obtained permission to conduct a comprehensive family study. With advances in human genetics during the 1970s, Richardson saw in the Calloways an unprecedented opportunity to study the prolonged effects of consanguinity in an isolated population. So the 1146, with a more sensitive and respectful approach than his predecessors, Richardson secured the cooperation of several family members, especially after offering free medical care as part of the study. The results were revealing and scientifically significant. Through detailed analysis of medical histories, phenotypic characteristics, and family history, Richardson mapped 5 specific genetic conditions that had become predominant in the family: 2027 Waardenburg syndrome, a rare condition characterized by partial discoloration of hair, eyes of different colors, and deafness in some cases. In the Calloway family, this condition had combined with other genetic traits, creating a unique and more severe variant. Crouzon syndrome, a genetic disorder causing premature fusion of cranial sutures, resulting in abnormal development of the skull and facial characteristics. Richardson documented that this condition affected about 35% of the Calloways. Os polydactyly, the presence of extra fingers on the hands or feet, affecting approximately 28% of the family. As hereditary intellectual deficiency, ranging from mild to severe, present in almost 60% of family members to some degree. A rare form of the skeletal dysplasia, causing abnormal body proportions and mobility problems in approximately 15% of the family. So 13.7/3. What we observed in the Calloways is an extremely rare convergence of multiple recessive genetic conditions. Richardson wrote in his report, published in the Journal of Medical Genetics in 1979. In a genetically diverse population, each of these conditions would occur at very low frequencies. However, due to generations of consanguineous marriages, we see these conditions not only at high frequencies, but also in combinations that are rarely or have never been documented in medical literature. So 1344 Therm. One of the most studied cases by Richardson was Isaiah Calloway, a 34-year-old man who had a combination of Waardenburg and Crozon syndromes. Isaiah had a distinctly unusual facial appearance, widely spaced eyes of different colors, one blue, one brown, an excessively prominent forehead, and an underdeveloped jaw. It is a 14.07. Despite these extreme physical characteristics, Isaiah had relatively preserved cognition and served as an unofficial family historian. Isaiah told me stories dating back 5 generations, reported Richardson. He described how his ancestors deliberately avoided external marriages because they believed that Calloway blood was special and chosen by God. So 14.31, this belief passed down through generations served as a religious justification for practices that resulted in genetic devastation. Richardson's study also revealed something surprising. Despite the obvious genetic problems, the Calloway family had developed remarkable resilience. They created mutual care systems that allowed even the most affected members to play a role in the community. So 14.755. There is a complex social structure that has developed over the generations, said Richardson. Individuals with relatively preserved cognitive abilities assume responsibility for those most severely affected in a system of interdependence that, although problematic in many ways, demonstrates a notable social adaptation to their genetic circumstances. So 1550s, Richardson's work first brought the Calloway case to the wider medical community's knowledge, although still discreetly within specialized academic publications. The year 1983 marked the beginning of the end for the Calloway's isolation. A combination of factors, including new road construction in the region, a growing presence of rural social services, and an investigative report in the Charleston Gazette, finally brought public attention to the family's situation. A 15.47, the report, entitled We the Forgotten of the Mountains, included photographs with blurred faces of some family members and detailed the conditions in which they lived. The public response was immediate and forceful, with calls for state intervention. In March 1983, a multidisciplinary team composed of social workers, health professionals, and representatives of Virginia's Department of Human Services arrived at the Calloway property. So 1613, what they found was a declining community. The number of members had decreased to approximately 30, with a drastically reduced birth rate in the latest generation. Jedediah Calloway, who had taken family leadership after Josiah's death in 1979, initially resisted external intervention, but eventually relented when officials explained they had no intention of separating the family, only of providing medical and educational assistance. 1640. It was as if a door to another world had been opened, reported Catherine Williams, the social worker who led the team. Many of the younger Calloways, especially those with less cognitive impairment, showed an immense curiosity about the world beyond their mountains. In the following months, several initiatives were implemented. So 1659, comprehensive medical examinations were performed on all family members. School-age children were gradually introduced to the educational system with specialized support. Adults with treatable conditions received medical attention, in many cases for the first time in their lives. The 1770s, one of the most striking stories of this period was that of Mary Calloway, a 17-year-old who, despite presenting the family's typical facial characteristics, had above-average intelligence. After receiving glasses to correct her severe myopia and being introduced to educational materials, Mary demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for mathematics and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. 1742. In September 1984, Mary became the first Calloway to leave the mountains to study, enrolling in a special program at Rowan Oaks Community College. Her adaptation to the outside world was documented in a short article in the local newspaper, where she stated, "I feel as if I was born again. There is so much to learn, so much to see." So 1803. For the older and more severely affected Calloways, the transition was more difficult. Many resisted changes, and some never completely adapted to the increased contact with the outside world. One of the most significant aspects of the intervention was the genetic counseling offered to the family. So 1821, for the first time, they received clear explanations of how consanguineous marriages had contributed to the health problems they faced. For many, this revelation was deeply disturbing and challenged fundamental beliefs transmitted for generations. Hannah Calloway, a 42-year-old woman who had given birth to 5 children with her first cousin, only 2 survived beyond childhood, expressed her anguish in a recorded interview for the Project Archives. So 1842, "If we had known, if anyone had told us, we thought we were doing God's will by keeping our blood pure." In 1989, 6 years after the initial intervention, a follow-up assessment revealed profound changes in the Calloway community. The 1904 of the original property now housed only 18 family members, primarily the elders and those with conditions that made integration into wider society difficult. Younger members of the family had dispersed, some studying, others working in nearby cities. Most significantly, there had been no new cases of consanguineous marriage, and the few children born during this period were the result of unions with people from outside the family. 1931, Dr. Richardson, who continued to follow the family over these years, published a final article on the Calloways in 1991 entitled "As for Interruption of a Consanguineous Cycle, Social Interventions and Genetic Outcomes." In it, he noted, "The Calloway case represents both a human tragedy and an opportunity for learning. The 1955 generations of isolation and intra-family marriages created a microcosm of genetic pathologies we will likely not see again on this scale." More importantly, however, is the fact that this cycle was finally interrupted, offering future generations a chance to escape the genetic destiny that imprisoned their ancestors. So 20 fictive, medical records, genetic studies, and social documentation related to the Calloways have been preserved as severas, with protected identities in academic archives, serving as an important case study for geneticists, anthropologists, and public health professionals. They remain a sobering testimony to the consequences of extreme isolation and prolonged consanguinity. So 2738. If you watched this far, it is because you appreciated this story. Leave a comment saying, "I watched here," so I can get to know you and see who truly enjoys the stories here on the channel. And don't forget to subscribe right now to receive more impactful stories like this one. Real stories that reveal the darkest secrets and the most tragic destinies of families, marked by consanguinity through generations. So 2103, leave your like and share this video with someone you know would be fascinated by these disturbing revelations about the human condition.